Greetings, fellow officers! My name is Lieutenant Yooey. In this video, I'll be covering all the basics of the weapons console. In order, I'll be touching on the main screen controls, zoom level, shields management, torpedo energy conversion, beam frequencies, beam firing modes, torpedo types, and torpedo tube management. The commands I'll go over in this video will be the default settings, but you can customize your hotkeys in the controls.ini file in your Artemis folder. Because of shortcomings related to the torpedo default commands, I strongly recommend all weapons officers customize at least those hotkeys. So let's get started. Main screen controls, at least outside of combat, will usually be your responsibility. You can control the main screen with the grouping of buttons at the top right of the weapons console, or with the F2 through F8 keys. One thing you cannot control by key binding is the CAM button in the middle of the main screen controls. The CAM button toggles the main screen view between third-person and first-person perspectives. F2 displays the forward view. F3 displays the port or left view. F4, the starboard or right view. F5, the rear view. F6 brings up the tactical display. F7, the long-range sensors. And F8 displays the ship's status information. Moving on to zoom level. You'll want to find what zoom level will maximize your vision around the ship. To adjust your zoom level, press T to zoom in and Y to zoom out. Ideally, you want to be able to see everything within the 5,000 unit radius indicated by the gray circle around your ship. The zoom level allowing this will vary depending on the resolution of your console window. You'll use that zoom level most of the time, but you should be ready to zoom in further to more quickly and easily select particular targets in enemy formations, and zoom out again to regain any lost situational awareness. Shields are generally the weapons officer's responsibility. Nonetheless, it is a capacity shared with the HELM officer. Consequently, it is common for both officers to attempt to raise the shields at the same time by pressing the toggle shields key, that's the Q key, causing the shields to raise and then immediately drop. This kind of accident can have devastating consequences depending on the situation. To prevent accidental lowering of shields, always use the K key to raise them. Along the same lines, to lower shields, you should use the L key. If you ever use the toggle key, only use it to lower shields. At least when lowering shields, the consequences for accidentally raising them are minimal. In the TSN Mod, fuel collection systems, or FCS, allow the ship to recover energy without docking with a station or rendezvousing with a supply ship. However, these systems do not work when the shields are up. Keep an ear out for FCS calls from the captain or from HELM, and make sure the shields are down when appropriate. By the same token, when enemies are approaching while the ship is recharging, do not raise the shields too soon. Watch the enemy carefully. Try to raise the shields in the last several seconds to ensure the ship has gained all the energy it can. And beware of foes with jump drives that can close distances of 5,000 in a flash. While we're on the subject of the ship's energy reserves, you should take note of the two buttons on the lower right of the interface. Torped energy and energy to torp. Only the weapons officer has access to these. They're pretty self-explanatory. Torped energy will sacrifice one homing torpedo to increase the ship's available energy pool, whereas energy to torp will spend some of the ship's energy to manufacture a homing torpedo. It is important to know that converting back and forth is not a one-to-one exchange. It costs more energy to manufacture a torpedo than is gained by converting one back to energy. To convert a torpedo into energy, hold Shift and press the U key. To manufacture a torpedo from energy, hold Shift and press the I key. Now that we've covered main screen controls, zoom level, shields management, and energy conversion, it's time to move on to the fun part: how to blow stuff up. Beam frequencies affect how much damage a target's shields take from beam strikes. Using the wrong frequency can reduce your baseline damage by more than 10%, while using the correct frequency can more than double your baseline beam damage. You won't always know what frequency to use, and against lightly shielded enemies like Kralian cruisers and battleships, the difference isn't huge. However, adjusting your frequency does make a world of difference when it comes to most other enemy ships. Adjust your beam frequencies using the left and right arrow keys. Changing frequencies actually takes a tiny bit of time. If you quickly spam your arrow key 4 times to move from Alpha to Echo, you will very often find you did not reach Echo. I find the best practice is to patiently make frequency changes at least a half second apart, so that the system can keep up, and I can be confident I have the correct frequency without looking. To reduce reaction time, and compensate for this built-in delay, I recommend running Charlie as the default frequency. This way you are at most 2 steps away from where you need to be when a frequency change is necessary. Finally, it bears mentioning that beam frequency has no effect, neither positive nor negative, on enemy hull plating. Once the enemy shields are down, your beam frequency doesn't matter anymore, so this is usually a good time to return to Charlie frequency unless or until told otherwise. There are 2 ways to employ your ship's beam weapons: automatic and manual. You toggle between modes using the B key. Both modes have their place, and they both make compromises for the sake of improved function in one realm or another. In either case, to select a target, simply left-click on it. To deselect your target, left-click in empty space. In manual mode, that means clicking in the black space outside the gun sight. Automatic allows you to retain situational awareness while maintaining a target lock and firing. Beams will fire as soon as they are ready, and the locked target is in range, firing 1 beam array at a time back-to-back in quick succession, a third of a second apart, until all available beams have fired. The price paid for this situational awareness and prevention of overkill is a reduced overall rate of fire. You should use automatic when selecting a target, when shooting down enemy projectiles, and when you may need to change targets rapidly. Manual beam operation allows precision shooting and a much improved rate of fire. Beams will fire only on direct command by clicking on your target, and all ready-to-fire beam arrays that are in range will fire in a single unified volley. Additionally, when engineering increases power to beams, they recharge faster and will become ready to fire again more quickly if they are fired manually instead of automatically. Manual operation requires looking through the gun sight, which enables you to aim at any part of the ship visible from your ship's position using your cursor. Your cursor's color will turn green if your target is in range and you have at least 1 fully charged beam. Provided appropriate line of sight, this allows you to decide at will whether to shoot at the target's front-facing, rear-facing, or even disable the target ship's subsystems such as its weapons array, maneuvering thrusters, or impulse drive. Naturally, looking down the gun sight severely restricts situational awareness, effectively inducing tunnel vision. The only things visible are the weapons console interface, the target, and a small display in the lower right that indicates each beam array's charge status and whether the target is in range of any charged arrays. You should use manual when you can focus on 1 target at a time, when you need to maximize your firepower, and when you need to disable an enemy subsystem. And also when you need to hit the more distant flank of your target. Torpedoes are your tools of the trade for long-range combat and occasionally short-range supplemental firepower. Most torpedoes, provided you have a target lock, are guided munitions and have a range of 5,000 units. To use one, you must first load it into one of the ship's torpedo tubes. Torpedo tubes can accommodate any kind of ordnance, but can only hold one torpedo at a time. It is important to be able to operate the torpedo tubes without your mouse. You miss out on a chunk of damage output if you stop firing beams in manual mode to go click around the torpedo interface for several seconds. If you must use your mouse to perform some torpedo tube related task, switch to automatic beams until you're done, so that you're still firing at least a little. As a special reminder, these are the default controls for selecting torpedo types: loading, unloading, and firing torpedo tubes. I can strongly advise you to change these commands in the controls.ini file in your Artemis folder, for reasons that will become apparent. First, to select the torpedo type that you want to load, you will need to press the number key corresponding to the desired torpedo. Let's go over your options. 1. We'll select standard homing torpedoes, usually called homings to differentiate from all other torpedoes. A unique feature of homing torpedoes is that they can be manufactured from and reclaimed back into the ship's energy pool. In the TSN mod, homing torpedoes are faster than all other torpedo types and consequently enjoy a greater range of 8,000 units. 2. We'll select nuclear torpedoes, powerful weapons with a blast radius of 1,000 units. 3. We'll select mines, unguided, powerful explosives also with a blast radius of 1,000 units, launched a short distance behind the ship and subsequently triggered by any ship that gets too close. 4. We'll select EMP torpedoes, weapons with a blast radius of, you guessed it, 1,000 units, that will reduce the strength of any shield grid to 50% of maximum capacity and scramble its frequencies. To answer a frequently asked question, no, you cannot reduce a target's shields below 50% by firing another EMP. Any EMP impacts beyond the first don't do any more damage. 5. We'll select phase shock torpedoes. In the TSN mod, these are the most powerful torpedo at our disposal without a blast radius. However, they are slower than all the other torpedoes and have a shorter range of about 4,000 units. 6. We'll select beacons. Unguided signal emitters, launched a short distance behind the ship, kinda like mines, used to attract or repel many space-dwelling life forms, for either scientific or safety purposes. Before deploying beacons, you will usually need to configure them with the appropriate settings for your task by clicking on these buttons at the bottom of your screen and selecting which life forms they will affect, and whether the signal will attract or repel those life forms. There are no key bindings for these settings. Seven, we'll select probes. Unguided, long-range projectiles that carry an onboard sensor array that relays information to the science console. 8. We'll select tags, devices able to record biological data and relay that information to the science console, while also possessing some limited electronic warfare functions that inhibit some of the more exotic abilities employed by foes such as Scarran corporate mercenaries. Once you've chosen your torpedo type, you're going to need to load it into one of your ship's torpedo tubes. Depending on ship class, the number of tubes available to you will vary from as little as 0 to as many as 6. In order to cycle a torpedo tube, that is to load or unload, you must press the number key associated with a particular torpedo tube. 7 for tube 1, 8 for tube 2, 9 for tube 3, and 0 for tube 4. Tubes 5 and 6, if present, do not have default keys assigned to them. And yes, you heard and saw right. The key to load or unload tubes 1 and 2 are the same as the keys to select probes and tags. This can and will result, at least occasionally, in undesired loading and unloading of these tubes and these types of torpedo. That's just the way the default settings are configured. You can and should change one set of these commands or the other, or perhaps both. Finally, once you have your torpedo loaded into a tube, you fire by holding the Shift key and pressing the number of the tube you wish to fire. Shift 1 will fire tube 1, Shift 2 will fire tube 2, and so on. That concludes all of the controls and basic information that you need to know to get started. It is understandable if you find this all a bit overwhelming. This is a lot of information, and believe me, it only scratches the surface. So if you forget something, or if there's something you don't quite understand, feel free to ask questions. Lieutenant Yooey, out.